welcome to the podcast. My name is Father Bill W. I'm an Episcopal priest. I live here in Austin, Texas, and I've had the gift of recovery since December the 27th of 1972. I would really appreciate it if you guys, if you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button, do the like thing, because I think the messages we're trying to get out here via this podcast are things that people in recovery need to hear. So do a little 12-step work and send the message on, because it really helps in how they have set up this internet thing. So enough of that. My guest today and for this series is Matt D. And Matt is the archivist and head honcho for a program called All Addicts Anonymous. It was started by Tom Powers, who helped Bill Wilson write the 12 and 12 and was very instrumental, but very much in the background for the development of the 12-step AA program. He was an early member of AA back in the 1940s. We are doing an article written by his son, Tom Powers Jr. It is titled The 12-Step Ladder to God Consciousness. And I must say, Matt and I are climbing this ladder very slowly. So what was intended to perhaps be a one-off episode has turned into, I think this is the third, and it'll probably go to a fourth because I think we're afraid of heights. So we're approaching it very cautiously. Matt, welcome back to the podcast. It's always a pleasure to babble on with you.
Happy to be back and crawl up the ladder with you.
There we go. I'm going to begin. We are on page 4 of the article. It's a 7-page article. I put it in the show notes. You can access it there. Also put a link to All Addicts Anonymous if you want to explore them a little bit further. And I'm going to go back to the paragraph we left off with because I think it's the linking paragraph in this article, or at least one of them. Tom writes, "But the steps, the 12 steps, are more than a guideline for rehabilitating drunks. They possess a far broader potential for remaking human lives. Alcoholic rehabilitation occurs not as the end result of the steps, but as a byproduct. The central aim of the steps is stated in the 12th step as spiritual awakening, not alcohol abstinence, but spiritual awakening. Sobriety is a byproduct of that process." So relate that, if you could, Matt, to the ladder analogy that Tom is using here.
I had been thinking about this actually recently. I was listening to Tom Sr.'s Sanity Talk, and he was talking about different states of consciousness related to what alcohol itself does to you. And he was saying about, this is in reverse to what we're talking about here, but he was saying that drunkenness itself is a byproduct of what it is we're searching for in alcohol, right? Like nobody wants to barf on themselves and stumble and mess up their speech. There's something that we are looking for in it. Yeah. Alcoholics tend to have a mystical streak that runs through them, and they're very much looking for some kind of relief.
Right.
The steps themselves are designed for that. They're designed for that spiritual consciousness, this God consciousness that Bill Wilson used to call it. Mm-hmm. And then the byproduct of that is alcohol rehabilitation, right? Mm-hmm. Abstinence. Abstinence is not its central aim. That's the central aim of almost every, I won't call them programs because they're not programs, but every method for dealing with addiction all the way up to AA for the most part was about abstinence.
Mm-hmm.
That falls way short.
It's not going to be satisfying. It's not going to satisfy what Jung, the search for transcendence that is built into the human condition. And we alcoholics, we just magnify that. We exemplify it in extraordinary ways.
There are methods to produce abstinence that are much more effective than Alcoholics Anonymous, and they could be handcuffs in a cell.
Right.
Like you could be physically tied up in such a way that you may never return to your act of addiction.
Right.
But what is that?
It's not going to
that's
solve the problem.
That's just physical slavery. And this thing that we're dealing with here is a form of spiritual slavery. Right?
It's freedom. In essence, it's freedom that we're searching for.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is. And in this kind of paradoxical way, like many spiritual things are, and it touches on this in the 12 and 12. It's an idea I think they got from the fourth way system, but it is the more, in essence, it's this: the more rules you put yourself under. Again, that's not a term we use in the 12-step world. The more you put yourself under the law of the 12 steps, the more free you are, right? And you look at this thing from the beginning and you're like, this is your first look at this thing and you're like, oh man, a moral inventory. Oh, I got to admit all this stuff. Oh, I got to go out and pay people back. I got to go to this thing a couple times a week. I got to read this book. This is just a bunch of stuff. It doesn't look like freedom.
No.
It looks like a bunch of responsibilities. We've been running away from those forevermore. And we don't realize that the more responsibility, the more that we take on of this thing, actually, the more free we become.
But let me throw this one into the equation here. The ladder is there to get us someplace. One of the prisms, I think you could say, to kind of keep pace with what you're talking about, is to stay stuck on the ladder. I'm going to go back to rung 4. I'm going to go back to rung 1. I'm going to ponder rung 3 again. They're intended to get us someplace, and not to stay stuck on them. Because I think that's what religion does. It gets you stuck, oftentimes in what appears to be transformation and transcendence. But for many, it's just kind of stuck in the hamster wheel, and you keep going around it and around it and around it.
I think that relates to the inner condition of the individual. And I'll give the scenario, the biblical scenario of the two thieves, and you have two individuals exactly in the same situation. Both are thieves. Both are being tried to death for their criminality, if you will. And one is promised paradise, and the other one we're a little unsure about. And why is one given paradise and the other one not, when they're both in the exact same condition? And I think that's a case of where we are at. Not the steps on a ladder are a reference to physical things, right? But we're talking about states of consciousness,
right?
And it's like you could do a 10-step or a 4-step or even the 11-step in a certain frame of mind related to a certain level of consciousness. You could do it in a completely different one, and have a totally different response that would come out of it. And go ahead.
And that is the goal of the ladder, of the steps.
Exactly.
Is to have that transformation of consciousness.
To use a fourth way idea, our freedom is above us now, right? Slavery is not alcoholism. Slavery is to be in the basement of ourselves psychically.
Oh, I love that. Say that again.
Yeah. Freedom is above us. And slavery is to be in the basement of ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to live up to our potential.
Yes.
Not to realize who we truly are.
Which is always present every moment.
And yeah, that's right. Present every moment, accessible in a moment. In a sense, the pain of the soul is trying to get our attention that we're not rightly related to the powers that be.
Yes, and the beautiful thing of the pain in the soul is that it puts a person in a place where they can say, like Wilson did, if there is a God, may he show himself. It makes you open in a way. And we're going to talk further in this piece about intellectual and spiritual arrogance. And these are all bars. These are things, inward bars. These are things in the basement of ourselves that keep us in slavery. And it is above that where we can get to actual freedom.
And you may not realize that until you're 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years sober.
Very true. And almost always, it's just the way that it is in God's world. It's almost always because of a crisis, because of some, thing where you are really desperate.
The gift of desperation.
Yes. And in a way, so countercultural.
Oh, God, yes.
Religion and AA both honor the condition of desperation. Like when we find someone that's desperate, we see something sacred.
Right.
We're like, we even if we can't help the man, it's like the Hindu darshan, it's like power is transformed from it. It's like just being around it can do something for you, because we're not always in, thank God, in another way, we're not always in complete desperation. Now, it is the work of these steps to keep us in a place of realization of need, right? Like we are to do the work daily. That's why there's continual inventory that we do, and listening and other things where we can.
11 and 12.
In 11 and 12, we're doing these things, a maintenance part of the program. We're doing this to continue to keep alive our realization of need. But you never realize your need more than when you are truly desperate.
And you don't have to get drunk to get to that place.
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, look at Frank Bookman's case. It was resentment that brought him to that kind of desperation, and the physical sickness that came off of it, and the inability to be efficient and to do, and it wore him down.
And Wilson got terribly depressed for what, 10, 11-year period in his life after he got sober?
Yes. Yes, and we spoke about this just briefly before we started this podcast, but the depression is often related in that sense. Now, there's many things going on, and there's many kinds of depressions, if you will, or many things that elicit depression. But a great portion of that depression is very similar to a St. Francis of Assisi or a Brother Lawrence or something. And that is that the foundation of a person's starting at probably age 2 or 3, the foundation of a person is their personality, their ego personality. Mm-hmm. It's this thing that addresses the world. In Bill Wilson's case, it's conquering everything that comes his way. If he wants to be
the number one man,
he wants to be the best at baseball. He wants to learn the violin. His grandfather says, "You can't make a boomerang." He says, "The hell I can't."
Watch me, baby.
Watch me. Right. And this is the development of personality. This is in many ways, it's a very good aspect of a human person.
Exactly.
It does need to be baptized through suffering and come out with a higher will. Right. But this is personality. Personality eventually you're going to contend with it in this program.
And what we're aiming for is a personality change.
A personality change. That's right.
Psychic change, a change at great depths. See, this ladder, does it really go up to God or does it go down? I've thought about that. Jung said those people who don't find God probably haven't looked low enough.
Yes.
It's not up in the clouds kind of thing. It's down in the depths of the human personality that we're going to find him.
Yes. In modern psychology, where God is out of the picture, the idea is there's a ladder there too, in a way, if you will. But the idea is that you are to develop the personality, right? The personality is supposed to get better. Mm-hmm. In cases of what we're talking about, regenerative type schools, programs that lead to God consciousness, it's not the development of personality in a way. Personality is at the expense of the growth of something more essential in the human person, right? The self.
Capital S, capital S.
Yes.
The God within.
Yes.
That is seeking expression through us or not. Or, so we either allow it, we channel it, or we stop it.
Yes, that too. We're not trying to be better persons here. We're trying to wake up. That's what we're trying to do.
And they're very different.
Very different.
We just try harder with the same old crap.
No, I mean, how easy is it to put yourself asleep with the idea that you're a good person? I mean, that may be the most lulling of all tunes that we play inwardly all the time, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm doing so good here. Oh, I gave this talk, or I helped this guy, or I'm going to these meetings and I haven't had this drink in a while. And we're snoring away spiritually.
Yeah, that's the trap.
Yep.
That's the trap. Well, do you think we should see what Tom P. has to say?
Yeah, we better, right?
We'll never get through this damn thing. All right, I'm going to read a paragraph and then you chew on it for a bit. The steps are a program for nothing less than a complete life change. They are a blueprint for that turning about in the deepest center of a man's, pardon the sexist language here, for a man's being that transforms him from a mere human animal into a son of God. This is spiritual conversion, properly so called. The 12 steps are a well-proven program for training people to undergo this profound change. Over the past 85 years, they have produced genuine and permanent conversions in millions of men and women, many of them the unlikeliest imaginable candidates for such a turning. I'm not sure where the 85 came from, but it's not really important. Get to the heart of that paragraph.
Yeah, I think what is it, 90 years or something now?
Yeah, it's 90, and this was not written 5 years ago, so that's what threw me.
Just an update made later on. I guess we should have had an asterisk or something there.
Matt just wrote a little asterisk in his copy, so I could see
that's
it work there.
That's what's taking me a second there. Yes, there's a mention here. This is the blueprint for the turning about in the deepest center of a man's being. Obviously, that is a reference to the word we use, which has a Latin root, to conversion, right? This is
right.
This what I understand is the definition of surrender in Buddhism. It is the deepest part of a man where this turning about, comes. There's nothing surface going on here, right? Again, on the surface, we're talking about personality.
Yeah.
At the center of this thing is the essence of the man, the soul of the man, and that's what we're relating to here.
Soul is psyche, and it's psychology, and it's psychiatry. It's what that business should be about, but it's not.
Yes, in the book, The Answer to Addiction, Tom Sr. talks about this in great detail to tie it into the biblical thing. This is Christ's first command was translated to repent. It's metanoiate, right? And nous is your mind, right? But it is your highest mind. Right. And meta is to change or to go beyond. So Christ is saying, go beyond your highest mind. And in cases of psychiatry, it's not even the nous, it is the friend, it's the lower mind that they're looking for an alteration to occur. I mean, we can see the evidence of it, but I think that's why these steps work, because that's exactly what they're trying to do. We're not trying to improve the person's thinking. We're trying to get the person to a higher level of being, a higher level of awakening, a spiritual conversion.
Yeah, you got to keep that 12th step firmly in mind. You got to keep in mind why you're climbing the damn ladder.
Yes. Yes.
And you just fall in love with the ladder,
Yes.
And that's a danger.
Yes. And in real truth, the ladder is a thing that can shift from moment to moment. You can find yourself on a lower rung at one moment and a higher rung at the next.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to me, that's why 10 and 11 and 12 include all the previous steps.
They really do. And as you just stated a moment ago, it's like the best way to move on the ladder starts with, and we started our first podcast on the series on it, is to remember. And that is the function of the 10th step, which is to watch.
Watch. That's right.
to be aware of ourselves, to be aware of our need. That's the way to hold on to the ladder. When you and it provides a certain inertia to go up the ladder as well.
Right. And if you're going to watch, you're going to see more and more crap. I don't care how many years of sobriety you got.
Yes.
Yes. Go back to the Buddhist, unless you're a bodhisattva just here for the benefit of others, which is a real danger to think you are in case you're not. You're going to find stuff, egotism, in various forms, fears in different forms. If you catch that, then the 12-step journey becomes never ending.
That's correct.
Which is so important. Because people get bored with it the way they're doing it.
Yeah. That's exactly right. There's no ceiling on this thing.
Yeah. Even in cases of spontaneous conversion, a program is indispensable if the new life is to be maintained. The conversion experience is never an end in itself. It is always the beginning of a process. That is why the world's great spiritual traditions call it a birth. Without an ensuing connection with an authentic program, even a perfectly genuine conversion experience can sour into egotistical delusion, veer off into emotional imbalance, or be swallowed up in worldly forgetfulness. That's a mouthful, but it's wonderful.
No, this paragraph is so loaded with so much. The first thing of spontaneous conversion, there have been cases of spontaneous conversion where people have these profound experiences. The function of a ladder is to continue to keep ourselves on the way, right? On the ladder. If there's this function of awakening that comes from doing the steps, that's not an end in itself, right? And to have a spontaneous conversion, this is the concern about many of the people, and maybe there's some really great work going on out there in relationship to taking psychedelic type drugs and microdoses and this and that.
Right, they can produce the experience or mimic it anyway.
Yes. But the experience itself, like to go back to Bill Wilson's account, to have the experience itself, it's not done and over with at that point.
That's right. Just beginning.
It's just a beginning. It is just a birth into this new life, right? And they may be profound births or they may be gentler births, but it is still a birth. And the point it then goes into this thing as a birth. The analogy of an infant is so critical. So if our new life is analogized as an infant, the way it works with an infant, you cannot ever take your mind off of that infant. Now, there may be times where that infant, you may leave it in its room for 4 or 5 hours. If you forget that infant for 2 days, that infant is gone. Right? There is a death. And that's how this thing is. If you neglect this thing, you may temporarily be able to, you're not tending to the baby at all times, but your mind and your heart can never be separated or you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And I think this thing works that way.
And when you say this thing, can you be more precise?
Yeah, sure. What I mean by that is this regenerative program and our relationship to it.
Our relationship to the beyond.
Yes. Yeah, if you forget your connection to this thing.
You forget who you are and you become who you're seeking. Look out.
Yes, and I think that's, again, is a reference to falling asleep, right? Falling asleep, forgetfulness. These are states of mind that are the most dangerous of all. They're more dangerous than alcohol is. Alcohol is just a symbol, right?
Right. But this is so important because Jung cautions that if you start the spiritual journey, watch out, because there are going to be periods of inflation and deflation.
Mm-hmm.
It's inevitable. You're going to think you're more than you are, or you're going to think you are less than you are.
Mm-hmm.
Both are very dangerous, and therefore, back to step 10, watchfulness.
They are, and at the same time, the actual experience of these things are what helps keep us on the way.
That's right. That's right. You can't avoid them, so benefit from them.
Yes.
You know, so many people in 12-step, I'm restless, irritable, and discontent, and I shouldn't be, rather than what you just said. Oh, thank you for that. My soul is telling me it's not rightly related.
It's so similar to, like, you know, the oil light on your car or something. You know, it's just an indicator that it's time to wake up again.
Right. A gentle kick in the psyche.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so this is saying with a conversion experience alone, without the continual application of a program, you can get into egotistical delusion. We spoke about that earlier.
Right.
You know, you start to take yourself as a special person.
I'm a circuit speaker now.
Yes. Well, remember, personality, this thing of personality, is an acquired aspect in the human person, right? It is not something he's born with, right? A little child doesn't start referring to themselves as I until they're about, 2.5 or 3. Prior to that, they don't come in with egotism. Right, they're devoid of egotism. They baby wants a bottle, or Matt wants a banana. It's not I. It's not right.
You have to separate first, but then you get stuck in having separated. That's the psychological journey. You must become a self. That's the work Jung would say of the first half of life. Is to become a self.
Yes.
And you have to be special, and you have to be different, and you need little gold stars on your forehead. Oh, I'm wonderful, which is very nice at a certain age. But if you're 50 and you still need gold stars, you missed the ladder.
Yes. Well, in the fourth way system, there is a development of personality.
Now you say fourth way. Just explain that just a tiny bit.
Fourth way system is also a school that was founded by a man named Gurdjieff, and he had certain students, Peter Ouspensky. It was essentially, it's the science of spiritual awakening. Many of their books, not all of the things in them Tom was necessarily keen on, but much of their books or teaching that they had given was about awakening, and he thought that it was extremely useful for individuals. Now, he always put it through the filter of the 12 steps and never took it as a thing in itself.
Yeah.
But in that particular system, it talks about the development of the individual, where they go through a period of time where personality is developed, and you start off with an essential nature and your essence, and developing around it is the personality. Eventually, the idea is that the personality is to develop well and balanced. Right now, that's not the case for many of us in the 12-step program.
That ain't me.
Right? You want to watch out for the development of something else called false personality. Right, and that's where many of us got really hung up.
Right.
At a certain point, the personality is supposed to be at its expense. It is to feed the essence. It is to feed the thing that we brought into this life with us. It is the thing that we hope to have developed enough that it is to go beyond this physical life. When you have these conversion type experiences, they're to start you on this way, and right of way you start to come up against your personality. Right, the big book is working us into self-will, resentment. These are all false aspects of our personality, and we are to start to work on not feeding those things, right? And with the vitality that's not being used to feed them, we are actually feeding something in us that is much higher, and that's why we call this thing a regenerative program, because it is beyond just regular generation.
Is there a Ouspensky for dummies? I tried reading him. He's very difficult.
personally, my own personal opinion, the best is Maurice Nicoll, because he was not only a student of Ouspensky and
Right.
Gurdjieff, but he was unbelievably close to Carl Jung. He was supposed to take over for Carl Jung. Carl Jung was the best man at his wedding. Because of that, and because of his use of the somewhat scripturally based in a way, not in this moral sense that is blue nose or anything, but I feel that is the most accessible.
It's kind of like Jung. Many people have difficulty just diving into Jung. And so you find people who can lead you into the deeper waters that he's swimming in.
When it comes to the things that relate to what we're talking about here directly, I've gotten a lot of help from that source for sure.
Why don't you send me the best Nichols book, and I'll put it in the show notes, okay?
I will. And also I should mention too, there is a biography done of him that was quite fascinating and very easy to read.
Yeah, send me that too. We'll put it in there. Okay.
Yes.
Little homework for you guys out there. Just take a little pause in your ladder climbing and go a little deeper into that. I'm going to go back to the paragraph, next paragraph. The mark of inspiration on the AA program is nowhere more evident than in its name, the 12 steps. Steps are something you take going up a stairway or ladder. The 12 steps are a ladder, starting in the mire of ordinary, self-willed, self-centered, crazy life, and rising up into the light-flooded realms of God consciousness.
There's the basement again.
Yeah. It's kind of an either or. I'm either converted, surrendered, aligned with, or I'm not. If I'm not, I'm going to feel it. Oh, don't be discouraged by that.
Yeah.
It's a prompting. It's a pushing. Go further. Become who you were meant to be. And if you're not doing that, your soul is going to send you a message.
Yeah. And your surroundings. So you're this is another phrase from the fourth way system, but your being attracts your life, right? If you're in a low level of being, if you're down in the basement, it attracts your life experience. This is, again, the reference to the two thieves, or why you have accounts of people who are in concentration camps, like Wild Bill Cody in the Return from Tomorrow book, that is, while in the middle of this unbelievable suffering, is in a state of joy, is in a state of service, right? It's because inside themselves, they are not living in the basement. The basement is the self-willed, self-centered, crazy life, right? And these are people who are above that. They're more awake. The phrase of your being attracts your life. The thing that what happens is when you're in the basement, your life starts to, well, frankly, it's a mess, right? So your life is the projection screen of where your being is at.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those things are a call to increase your level of being, right? We're working the program is given to us, but it's given to us in life. And the law of life is that, if you're not in a right place within yourself, all around you is going to be shrieking at you sometimes to get you to wake up.
The expression I was taught in early sobriety is we attract to the level we are at.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's the worst part of addictive substances or whatever it is. It is earplugs against the crying of life to wake us up, right? Life is just, again, shrieking loudly at times. Wake up, and this thing is earplugs. And is not to hear it, which we need to wake up, right?
Mm-hmm. So identify your earplugs.
Yes.
And pull them out.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's 10 again. That's step 10. Continued to take personal inventory, and when we found an earplug, we pulled it out.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah. All ladders to God consciousness are camouflaged to ward off the lukewarm, the semi-serious, and the merely curious. There are obstacles that must be overcome before the ladder can be put to use. Someone bumping into these obstacles may feel that God or those on the ladder are just being difficult, but the real explanation lies in quite another direction. God, in His mercy, insists on providing protection against a kind of grievous injury which can result when people who do not actually mean business contact the higher levels of spiritual awakening in an unprepared and profane state.
Personally, I'm not sure how much of the latter has got camouflage built into it, whether it's just the laws of spiritual reality, to the extent that people are coming into this thing with egotism and false personality and everything else, that itself is what blocks them from higher contact, or what, I don't know. Again, I think this is one of the dangers of using substances that release people into higher states of consciousness, because they're going into it ill prepared. It's the
Right.
the scripture about the person who is at the wedding feast and they're not properly dressed for the feast, right?
Yeah,
If you
yeah.
enter into this feast without being properly prepared for it, there's serious damage. I'm not sure how all of that works. I do know that there's a certain kind of efficiency in God's world and realm. And I also know personally, when I've worked with individuals, very often I have recommended that they do certain things to actually see, is this person serious or not? Dr. Bob makes reference to the efficiency of this thing, where you're a steward of your own time and of God's resources. You're to utilize them properly, and you don't want to waste your time or anyone else's. And also, you don't want to introduce anyone into something that is of this level of fire, if you will, and to have them wrongly get burnt, prematurely, right? So I think that there already is some kind of aspect there where people are protected, if you will. That's, again, the dangers of taking drugs and being forced into these realms. You do enter into them leaving egotism behind, but when you go back, the egotism, you are even more attached to it, and it is inflamed and it becomes hardened. And that's the whole addiction process. Constant, attempts at relief from it. And then when we go back to egotism, which we're in the ego identity, which we will always be, we're more firmly attached to it. And that's a danger. So yes, I think I don't know if it's built into the steps, or if it's part of the process, or the way that God has it, or as a reaction to the egotistical condition of individuals. But there is a thing where you are protected from getting beyond a certain place, where more damage could be done to you by it.
Mm-hmm. I get people who would, say, well, I tried two-way prayer and I didn't get anything. You know what I mean? I didn't hear anything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that may be protecting them in a sense, because I think what this is saying is they haven't done the preparatory work to get to it.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't stilled the mind enough and calmed the ego down sufficiently to prepare themselves for an alternative voice inside. The other voice is so loud.
Mm-hmm.
It's keeping them from it.
Also, what we're saying earlier is critical. Like the obstacles are whether it's provided by, I think it's provided by life. The obstacles, right?
Yeah.
But the obstacles are necessary if we're to grow anywhere. If you went to the gym and you lifted, air, you're going to gain no muscle strength,
Mm-hmm.
and in this, if you're going to gain any kind of spiritual muscle strength, you're going to exercise the program principles, this ladder. You're going to apply it into a situation where there are obstacles in life that have to be overcome or what have you. right?
And that's the resistance. That's the resistance that you feel. Call
Yes.
the same thing in the weight world, huh? Resistance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's necessary.
It's necessary. Gotta have
Yes.
it.
Yes.
Be very cautious if you don't think you're exhibiting it, or experiencing it. There's going to be resistance.
Yes.
The ego doesn't really want to go there.
I think it's one of the things that makes, let's say, booze or drugs so appealing is there are very little obstacles. There's the obstacle of you could be thrown in jail or whatever, but it's you don't have to sit on your hindquarters and meditate for 45 minutes to get to, you just take the thing, right? And
Right.
you're shot up the ladder, and that's dangerous.
Wilson experimented with LSD a little later in his recovery process, huh?
Yes.
Yeah.
There were very specific things that they were trying to do at that time.
Yeah.
Yes, they were very interested in the ideas that we're discussing here, which was that there was a certain relief and release that was produced by the profound spiritual experience he had.
Mm-hmm.
And there are many. They were very keen on communicating this program, and they were aware that there were certain individuals who were just incapable of it. And they thought if they could have that kind of experience, perhaps they would then be able to go through the door of conversion, if you will, to the ladder of the steps, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or to this ladder like we're talking about here. Like it would be a possible beginning for these individuals. They just couldn't be reached any other way. There were many other reasons that they were involved. That was one of them.
Yeah, yeah. But he discontinued it. Was Tom against that? Was he one of the ones counseling him against it?
At a certain point, yes. I think
thought
so. There was a group of men there. So there were a group of, I don't want to say just men, there were men and women. There was a West Coast group, were the pioneering group of it, and they were not alcoholics. There were involved the Osman and Hofer, these two doctors. They were interested in the treatment of those who had schizophrenia. And also they were interested in the application of it for alcoholics.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, hence AA gets on the scene. Well, I think that Bill Wilson was interested in those two particular types himself. The New York group consisted of I think it was about 8 core people. And the first person out of that group that really saw this as a spiritual trap was Douglas Steer, who was a Quaker and I need to correct that. I made a mistake. It actually wasn't Douglas Steer. It was Eugene Exman, I meant to say.
Oh, okay.
And Exman is the editor at Harper, and
Right.
who Bill Wilson goes to visit with the 2 chapters of the big book, and he encourages him to have his own movement, because if people reach out for help, we can't do anything at Harper. And he's very encouraging, and he's very helpful with the production of many of the first key books that were produced in AA, the big book, the 12 and 12, and AA Comes of Age, and was a very close friend of the fellowship. He was one of the first ones to break from the group. Although he saw the experience as valid, he saw the use of the substance to have the valid experience as a danger and a trap. It is the scripture of going over the wall instead of through the door.
I have a close friend dealing with trauma issues, and military trauma in his case. And he got on to ketamine and found it very helpful in the beginning in relaxing and being able to access some of the trauma issues. But in time, he pretty quickly moved to where he loved the high and was using it as an escape. And that's the danger with addicts, huh? We're looking for the effect and not getting down to the deeper elements that we're addressing in this article.
The thing about the ladder is always taking you through the door, right? It's never taking you over the wall.
Yeah, nice analogy. Okay, we did 1, 2, 3, 4. We actually did 4 little paragraphs, Matt. I'm very impressed.
We're We're getting worse at this as we go.
We are, yes. Yeah. There's a message there somewhere, Get your butt up those ladders, the rungs there. But I think it's a good place to stop. I think we covered some good territory. We're getting close to the top of that ladder, and we need to know where we're heading and what the purpose of it is. And it's not just to get a better view; it's to get a hold of something that is out of our grasp, eh? And that's why we need a ladder. So
yeah, we do.
Yeah, very nice. Okay. And how are the chickens doing there on the farm, Matt?
Yeah, we've got like 5,000.
5,000 chickens.
We actually have more than that. We had something like 8,000 recently.
3,000 went to our grocery stores, or
close. We had 1,600 actually.
Oh, okay.
But, yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
They're happy.
Good. Well, next time you guys eat a chicken, I want you to think of Matt and be very grateful for the work he's doing there. It's keeping us all fed physically, and his work in AAA is keeping us fed spiritually. So, Matt, thank you once again for helping us climb the ladder. It's always educational every time I get an opportunity to speak with you. So thank you for doing this. And thank you, Dad, you're getting called. And I thank you guys for listening. And if somebody's calling you, go see what they want. So thanks for listening. God bless, and keep coming back.